Good morning. I hereby welcome you to this hybrid meeting and declare this 105th annual ordinary general meeting of the shareholders of the South African Reserve Bank duly constituted in terms of the regulations framed under the South African Reserve Bank Act number 90 of 1989 as amended. As stated in the notice of the meeting, the SAP had been undergoing a renovation and construction project at its head office, which necessitated a temporary relocation of our offices to Centurion. The SAP is pleased to now welcome shareholders to its newly renovated head office venue. We sincerely thank our shareholders for their understanding and continued support throughout this transition. Please be advised that this meeting is being recorded for future reference if required. The meeting complies with the Protection of Personal Information Act number 4 of 2013, as shareholders were requested during registration on the Lumi Technologies South Africa Proprietary Limited platform to consent to the SAP and Lumi collating, processing, and storing their data. Before I start my address, since this is a hybrid meeting and we have got shareholders attending in person and online, can I ask if everyone attending in person has signed the attendance register? Even if you are not a shareholder, please do sign the register and also indicate whom you are representing to ensure that we have a complete attendance record of the meeting. All shareholders present in person who hold 200 or more shares in the SAP and who are entitled to vote in accordance with the provisions of the SAP Act and its regulations should be in possession of an electronic voting device. Please indicate if you are a shareholder entitled to vote but have not yet registered or received a voting device. Well, looks like we are all set. Please note that only shareholders or their valid proxies will be permitted to speak during the formalities of the meeting. Every shareholder should have received a yellow laminated card on registration. This card must be raised for identification purposes when shareholders wishes to comment or ask a question at this meeting. Likewise, any shareholder attending this AGM online who holds 200 or more shares in the SAP and who is entitled to vote in accordance with the provisions of the SAP Act and its regulations should vote in accordance with the instructions as outlined in the notice. Shareholders are eligible to ask written questions related to the business of the meeting by selecting the messaging icon and typing their message in the chat box at the bottom of the messaging screen. Messages can be submitted at any time before a matter is put to the vote. Shareholders attending remotely can also participate and ask questions using the virtual microphone option. In this case, you will be required to dial into an operator using the number provided in your access email. The operator will verify the eligibility of the shareholders. Once I invite a shareholder to ask a verbal question, the operator will unmute the shareholder. Shareholders will be able to continue listening to the meeting while in the queue to ask a verbal question. Shareholders' questions will be answered during the meeting, and both the questions and the answers will be recorded in the minutes. However, should questions from shareholders be received after the closing of the poll and question time, they will be responded to directly via email. Please allow me to introduce my colleagues who are joining us to respond to any questions that the shareholders may have. They are the Secretary of the SAP, Ms. Zweli Swatkopiso. To her left is the Chairperson of the Audit Committee, Mr. Norman Mbazima. To his left is the Chairperson of the Remuneration Committee, Dr. Yvonne Muthian. And to her left is the Chairperson of the Board of Risk and Ethics Committee, Mr. Zoeib Hussein. and the chairperson of the Non-Executive Directors Committee, Ms. Lerato Mulibazi, at the far left. Ordinarily, I would share the podium with the Deputy Governors and the General Counsel. However, due to special constraints, these individuals are seated in the front row, and they are Deputy Governor Rashad Kasim, Deputy Governor Fundi Chasivana, Deputy Governor Mampo Mudise, and the General Counsel, Ms. Rebecca T. The terms of office of Ms. Lerato Mulebatsi and Dr. Khabu Badimu, who served as government-appointed non-executive directors, expired on the 31st of May 2025. The SAP is currently awaiting the decision of the President of the Republic of South Africa regarding the appointment or reappointment of the two directors. Now, allow me to move to my formal address. The global economy is experiencing a turbulent year. So far, it has proven resilient despite the shocks from wars and tariffs. We should not overstate this. Late last year, the International Monetary Fund still expected growth of 3.2% for 2025, which is now down to 3%. But in April, it was expecting 2.8%. So we have actually had some upward growth revisions. Given all that has happened in the first half of this year, it is surprising that growth has held up this well, and that forecasts are moving up rather than down. That said, there are not many reasons to feel safe. In the United States, businesses have front-loaded imports, and many have been in a wait-and-see mode as a way of dealing with tariff uncertainty. It is now increasingly clear that tariffs will settle at higher rates. The Yale Budget Lab calculates the effective tariff as of August at 18.3%, the highest since 1934. This implies significant price pressures that will have to be absorbed somewhere in the system. In this context, it is unsurprising that the US Federal Reserve has been keeping policy rates on hold, with the stance still somewhat on the restrictive side. In other regions, it has been clearer that trade disruptions are not causing significant inflationary pressure. The main concern has been that supply chain disruptions would push up prices, seeing as most other countries have taken an enlightened approach and refrained from raising their own tariffs to match US measures. As the year has developed, what we have seen is mostly modest disinflationary effects, stemming from weaker demand and excess capacity. A weaker dollar has also been supportive of other countries, especially emerging markets. This has given many central banks the scope to ease policy rates and adopt more neutral policy stances. In South Africa, our preliminary assessment is that tariffs and other uncertainties in the global economy are causing modest damage to growth while leaving inflation broadly unchanged. The US is a large trading partner for South Africa, but it is not as important as Europe, China, or the Southern African Development Community. Our exports to the US mostly consist of commodities, some of which are exempted, and manufactured products such as cars. Some parts of the agricultural sector are exposed, but total agricultural exports are only about 3% of our total exports to the US. In our latest forecast round, we factored in a higher tariff rate. This moved our growth projection for the year down by about 0.1 percentage point. While this is a setback, it is not catastrophic. Unfortunately, our growth rate for the year is still looking low close to 1%. This continues a stagnation trend that has been in place for roughly a decade. The economy grew at about 4% a year during the 2000s. It then slowed down steadily during the first half of the 2010s and has hovered at growth rates of about 1% ever since. As we have said repeatedly in our monetary policy statements, the drivers of weak growth are mainly structural and require structural reforms. Put in plainer language, without economic jargon, we need trains to run and the cities to function. Given the reform momentum underway, which is best illustrated by improved electricity availability, we see some scope for better growth in the coming years. We also believe National Treasury's efforts to stabilize debt can bolster confidence. In addition, the economy is enjoying some support from lower interest rates, with the yield curve shifting lower over the past year or so, and our policy rate down by 125 basis points since September 2024. Like almost all other economies, we suffered high inflation during the global inflation surge of 2022 and 2023. However, inflation decelerated sharply in 2024. We have had space to ease rates because inflation has been well contained, with prices up 3% over the past 12 months. There have been notable risks to prices this year, such as the spike in oil prices after the bombing of Iran in June and the sharp depreciation of the rand back in April. But these risks have been resolved quite rapidly, and inflation has remained moderate. Looking ahead, inflation is expected to rise over the next few months. Food inflation has picked up, mainly because of meat prices. Fuel prices are also falling more slowly now compared to the recent past. However, we expect this uptick in headline inflation to be temporary, and we look forward to inflation coming back to around 3% over the medium term, which is at the bottom of our 3 to 6% target range. To the extent that inflation settles at 3% and the inflation expectations continue their move lower, the bank's forecasting model shows lower interest rates if inflation remains contained at current levels. Given that this is the year of uncertainty, I do not want that projection to be mistaken for a promise. Events may not unfold exactly in line with our forecasts. Moving beyond monetary policy, we have started a new strategy cycle this year. One important change is that we have streamlined our strategic focus areas to just 3: price stability, financial stability, and payments. These are the 3 integral functions of the SAP. Our fundamental value to society is money that holds its value and that can be used in a stable financial system to make payments efficiently. Elevating these 3 roles will help keep the organization focused on its unique contribution to the well-being of South Africans. For financial stability, we conduct macro-prudential policy to protect the health of the overall system, and we undertake micro-prudential policy to ensure the health of individual regulated institutions. We also have the Corporation for Deposit Insurance to make sure depositors' money is safe in the event of a bank failure up to a limit of 100,000, which covers most depositors in the country. Our financial system has remained resilient over the years. We have nonetheless recently needed to take several enforcement actions regarding individual institutions. We are also paying special attention to new technologies, particularly artificial intelligence. These offer new efficiencies, but also pose new threats, for instance, through sophisticated and more dangerous cyber attacks. For payments, it has been a year of exciting developments, given our payments ecosystem modernization project. In South Africa, we have long taken pride in our sophisticated payments systems, but the truth is that we have fallen behind some of our peers. New digital technologies have emerged. In countries such as Brazil, digital payments have spread rapidly across society. Meanwhile, here in South Africa, cash, a technology that is literally centuries old, remains the single most popular form of payment. We are happy to provide notes and coin to the economy, and we want these offerings to be world-class too. But cheap, safe, and fast digital payments would offer many benefits to South Africans, and we intend to see that the gains of technological advancement are shared and not reserved for the small fraction of consumers who carry the latest smartphones. To do this, the SAP has been proactively working with the private sector to scale up a fast payment system in the country that will be more accessible, efficient, and affordable. We also expect these efforts will attract innovative firms to help South Africa regain its place at the forefront of the payments frontier instead of lagging behind. In SADC, we have continued our journey to modernize our payment ecosystem and have been working with central banks in the region to deliver efficient and cost-effective cross-border payments. Apart from our four focus areas of price stability, financial stability, and payments, the SAP also undertakes a range of other work that supports the APEX objectives. For this year, our international engagements have been particularly important, given South Africa's presidency of the Group of 20. Clearly, this is not the easiest year to manage a forum like the G20, which is consensus-based given the disagreements between member countries. Still, together with the National Treasury, we have been able to host constructive meetings for the finance track. At Zimbabwe last month, it was possible to agree on a communique for the first time since October 2024. The personal feedback I have received has also shown just how much our G20 partners appreciate the warm welcome we have shown them as South Africans. We are also focused on maintaining a strong balance sheet. In this year's accounts, you will see the results of significant reforms undertaken last year. A notable figure is our unusually large profits of 118 billion rands after tax. And I can tell you, we have received queries prior to this meeting from shareholders wanting to understand this number. Most of it reflects the 100 billion rands received from the National Treasury as part of the new Gold and Foreign Exchange Contingency Reserve Account, generally known as GFECRA, and this has been part of a settlement agreement. This strengthened our capital position so that we could also pay out a portion of the GFECRA funds to government, which is the legal owner of these balances. We would do so without selling off foreign exchange reserves. On that subject, I can also report that foreign exchange reserves are now around 68 billion US dollars, up by about 20 billion US dollars over the past 10 years. We are a long way from having the strongest reserve position amongst emerging markets, but we are no longer the laggard we once were. The South African economy, no doubt, has its vulnerabilities. but it also has its strengths. And I am proud to say the South African Reserve Bank is one of those South African strengths. The SAP would not be the institution that it is without its people. The past 5 years have been one of the most intense of changes for the organization, which for decades was largely office-based. We started our previous strategy journey with the onset of COVID-19 and a hard lockdown. We quickly had to adapt our operations, first to remote work and later to a hybrid way of work due to renovations of our head office, which is nearing completion. It is perhaps fitting then that as we begin the next 5-year strategy cycle, we do so from our refurbished head office. On Monday, the 4th of August, the first group of SAP staff began their full-time return to the office. We believe this will reinvigorate a culture of collaboration, helping us to continue serving the people of South Africa with excellence. Thank you very much for your attention. Let us now turn to the formal business of the day, which covers the following matters. Firstly, to receive and accept the minutes of the AGM held on the 30th of June 2024. Secondly, to receive and consider the SAP's annual financial statements for the financial year ended the 31st of March 2025, including the director's report and the independent external auditor's report. Thirdly, to approve the remuneration of the SAP's independent external auditors, namely BDO South Africa Incorporated and Sizwe Nsaluba Goboto Grant Thornton Incorporated, in terms of Regulation 22(1)B, read with Regulation 73C of the regulations for completing the audit for the 2024-2025 financial year. Fourthly, to appoint BDO and confirm the appointment of Ernst & Young Incorporated as the SAP's independent external auditors for 2025-2026 financial year, in accordance with Regulation 22(1)A, read with Regulation 73C of the regulations. Fifthly, to elect 3 non-executive directors to serve on the SAP's board. And finally, to consider any further business that may arise from the items mentioned in terms of Regulation 73E of the regulations. I can confirm that the Secretary of the SAP has not received any request for special business in terms of Regulation 73D of the regulations. I now invite the Secretary of the SAP to confirm the shareholder representation at this meeting.
Thank you, Governor. I am pleased to confirm that at this stage, the total number of issued share capital of the South African Reserve Bank is 2 million. It's 2 million shares. So we have 46 shareholders that are present here in person and online. We have 7 shareholders that are represented by proxy. And then we have 463 votes exercisable by the shareholders present in person here and online, as well as those holding duly certified proxy forms for this purpose. Thank you, Governor.
I have determined that voting on each of the matters under consideration at this AGM will take place by means of a poll. This hybrid meeting, together with the voting procedure, is being facilitated by an independent external party, LUMI. All the shareholders attending this AGM, either in person or online, who hold 200 or more shares in the SAP and who are entitled to vote in accordance with the provisions of the SAP Act and its regulations, will be allowed to vote at any time before the vote is closed. Since this is a hybrid meeting, can I please request Andrzej Vlada from LUMI to come forward to outline the housekeeping rules and to instruct the shareholders present in person and online on how to use the platforms. Andrzej.
Governor, and good morning to you. Good morning to the Deputy Governors, the Board, and everybody present in person as well as online. As mentioned by the Governor, this is a hybrid meeting, so voting will be done both online as well as in the room. I will take you through the voting procedures today, starting with the online participants, followed by the in-room participants. So the voting is open on our test resolutions, and I'll take you through those test resolutions this morning. So for those of you online, you would have noticed that either your screen has automatically changed to the voting, or you'll see that you have a voting tab either in the top left of your screen or on the bottom of your screen, depending on the device you are using. All you'd need to do online is you'd click on the option that you wish to make against each of the resolutions, so it looks like an electronic ballot form. You'll see a vote received message once you've selected an option. Please note you can change your mind at any point and select a different option. Our system will take the last option selected when the voting is closed. For those of you online, if you do struggle, there is a support helpline that you'll find on the home or info screen. Right, for those of you in the room that are entitled to vote and have chosen to vote at this AGM, you would have received a handset that looks like this. It looks like an old BlackBerry. You would have also, you would have also received a smart card that would be inserted in the top of the handset. Please make sure that the smart card is inserted correctly. That's with a gold chip facing you, inserted into the top of the handset, and you should see your name in the top of the screen, or whoever's being represented in the top of the screen. You'll also see that the voting is open on those resolutions, and I'll take you through those step by step now. So what you'll do is you'll use the blue trackball in the middle to scroll to the resolution you wish to vote on. So let's start on test resolution 1. So you'll press the blue trackball to select test resolution 1. You'll then press the green button to vote, and then you'll either scroll to the option you wish to make, or you can use the numbers. So if you want to vote in favor, you'll press 1, 2 to vote against, or 3 to abstain. And then once you do that, it'll send your vote, and you'll get a confirmation. And then what you'll do is you'll press on the green button again to go to the next resolution, and you'll repeat the same process. You'll click on the green button to vote. And then once you complete, you'll press the green button finally, and you'll see the 2 resolutions on your screen with your options that you selected next to them. If you do struggle, please raise your hand, and one of my colleagues that are in the room will try and get to you and try and assist you. And with that, Governor, I'll hand the meeting back to you. Oh, wait, sorry, Governor. My apologies. We haven't done the results of the resolutions. I needed to do that. So voting is now closed on those resolutions, and we'll go to the results of them so you can see what it's going to look like when we do go through the other resolutions. So starting with test resolution 1, we have 183 votes in favor, 7 votes against, and 67 votes in abstention. With 96%, the resolution is carried. Then we'll go to test resolution 2. And that one has 119 votes in favor, 77 votes against, and 57 votes in abstention. And that's 60.71%, so that resolution carries as well. And now finally, I'll hand the meeting back to you, Governor.
We now proceed to the real voting, the business of this meeting. Voting will start on the first 4 ordinary resolutions, namely the acceptance of the minutes of the 2024 AGM. Second, the acceptance of the annual financial statements for the year ended 31st March 2025. 3, the approval of the remuneration of the SAP's independent external auditors in the amount of 24,931,796 rands, excluding value-added tax. And 4, the appointment of the SAP's independent external auditors for 2025-2026 financial year in terms of Regulation 22(1)A, read with Regulation 73C of the regulations as follows. 4.1, BDO and EY as the SAP's independent external auditors for the 2025-2026 financial year. The SAPS Audit Committee has recommended the appointment of the new audit firm, EY, together with the reappointment of BDO. Last year, the shareholders appointed EY together with BDO as the SAPS independent external auditors for the year 2025-2026. Their appointment were subject to the annual re-election process conducted at the SAPS AGM with a potential maximum period of 10 years. Are there any questions or comments on any of these four matters before we go to the vote? I see no questions. The polls are now open and you can exercise your votes. Looks like there's still a queue at the voting stations. Voting is now closed. And the results are on the screen. 99% for and 1% against. Resolution 1 minutes carries. Resolution 2, 100% of the votes. Resolution 3, 100% of the votes. And resolution 4, 99% of the votes. So all the four resolutions carried. I now turn to the matters of the election of the three non-executive directors to the board of the SAP. The terms of office of Professor Charlotte Beitendag and Mr. Zoe Hussein as non-executive directors with knowledge and skill in industry, and the term of office of Professor Nicholas Fink as a non-executive director with knowledge and skills in agriculture will expire in tomorrow, the 9th of August 2025. Professors Buitendag and Fink will each have completed 3 terms of office and are therefore not eligible for re-election. Mr. Hussein will have completed his 2nd term of office and is therefore eligible for re-election by shareholders for a further 3-year term. The panel appointed in terms of Section 4(1)(c) of the South African Reserve Bank Act considered the nominations for these vacancies. This panel consists of myself as the governor of the SAP, the retired Constitutional Court Judge, Justice Baitsi Elizabeth Nkabinde, and the Chief Executive Officer of the Ethics Institute of South Africa, Professor Dion Rousseau, both nominated by the Minister of Finance, and Mr. Kaiser Muyani and Mr. Tulani Chifuta, both nominated by the National Economic Development and Labour Council. The panel confirmed 3 candidates for consideration by the shareholders for the 3 vacancies in terms of Section 4(1)(g) of the South African Reserve Bank Act. The panel is satisfied that all 3 candidates are eligible as well as fit and proper to stand for election as directors of the SAP. The curricula vitae of the 3 candidates were sent to the shareholders together with the notice of the meeting. I now turn to the election of a non-executive director to fill the vacancy for a person with knowledge and skill in the field of industry. Mr. Zoe Hussein was the first candidate selected for election in this category. Please exercise your vote by voting for or against Mr. Hussein or abstaining from voting. Are there any questions? I see none. The poll is now open and we will proceed with the director elections. The voting is now closed and the results are as follows. "100% voting unanimous. On the basis of the voting results, I declare that Mr. Hussein has been re-elected as non-executive director with knowledge and skill in industry. Congratulations, Mr. Hussein, on your re-election as a non-executive director. In terms of Section 5 of the SAP Act, this appointment shall be effective from 9 August 2025 to the day after the AGM in 2028. I now turn to the election of a non-executive director to fill another vacancy for a person with knowledge and skills in the field of industry. Mr. Stephen John Van Coller was the second candidate selected for election in this category. Please exercise your vote by voting for or against Mr. Van Coller or abstain from voting. Are there any questions? I see none. The poll is now open and we will proceed with the director election. The voting is now closed and the results are as follows. 82% for and 17% against. On the basis of these results, I declare that Mr. Van Coller has been elected as a non-executive director with knowledge and skills in industry. Mr. Van Coller is congratulated on his election as a non-executive director. In terms of Section 5 of the Sub-Act, this appointment shall be effective from 9th August 2025 to the day after the AGM in 2028. I now turn to the election of a non-executive director to fill the vacancy for a person with knowledge and skills in the field of agriculture. Professor Ferdinand Herbert Meyer was the only candidate selected for election in this category. Please exercise your vote by voting for or against Professor Meyer or abstain from voting. Are there any questions? The professor would be happy to answer them. The poll is now open and we proceed with the election of the director. The voting is now closed and the results are as follows. 99.56% for and 0.44% against. On the basis of these voting results, I declare that Professor Meyer has been elected as a non-executive director with knowledge and skills in agriculture. Professor Meyer is congratulated on his election as a non-executive director. In terms of Section 5 of the Sub-Act, this appointment shall be effective from 9 August 2025 to the day after the AGM in 2028. This concludes the voting procedure for the day. I would like to thank Lumi for their assistance and contribution. I would like to extend, on behalf of the board and the executives of the SAP, a special word of thanks to Professor Charlotte Buitendach and Professor Nicholas Fink for the dedicated and valuable service they have rendered to the board of the SAP over their 3 terms of office. Their deep sense of expertise, thoughtful contributions, and unwavering commitment to the SAP's mandate have been invaluable. Both professors brought a wealth of academic insight and governance experience that enriched our deliberations and strengthened the SAP's strategic direction. Once again, on behalf of the board, the shareholders, and the broader SAP leadership, I extend our heartfelt gratitude and wish you continued success in your future endeavors. South Africa does owe you deeply. You have served us well. As mentioned earlier, the Secretary of the SAP has not received any request from the shareholders for special business to be placed on the agenda of this meeting in line with the regulations. Are there any other questions or comments arising from the matters under consideration at this meeting including the governor's address. Shareholders? Yes, sir. Please identify yourself and your affiliation, and we will deal with you.
Thank you, Governor. My name is Mike Brown. I'm a shareholder and I work with a company called ETFSA.COSA. I congratulate the Governor and his board and his colleagues on delivering their strategic objectives for the past year and on strengthening the balance sheet of the bank so successfully. I think they've done a great job. If I may just exercise privilege of being at the meeting to, in terms of the contingency foreign exchange reserves, which you told us had grown quite significantly, including a rebate or refund from the Treasury, and the foreign exchange reserves, which have grown substantially as well to, I think, $68 billion. My question is, has the Governor considered the diversification of the foreign exchange reserves to perhaps other currencies or even gold, or is that, are you comfortable with holding your reserves in the US dollar, given what may just be temporary weakness in the US dollar? Thank you, Governor.
Thank you very much, Mike, for the kind words and the compliments. We do have a diverse holding in our foreign exchange reserves. We just say foreign exchange reserves, but we are one of the few countries that actually use the term gold and foreign exchange reserves. So we have got a significant proportion of gold as well. And we have got currencies apart from the US dollar. We have got the sterling, we have got the euro, we have got the Canadian dollar, we have got the Korean won, we have got the yen. So we had diversified. Still, the dollar is a very dominant part of our foreign exchange reserves at just around 60%. So that is where we are. The dollar is a very important currency in the global financial system. According to BIS data, 90% of the foreign exchange trading that takes place has got the dollar as one of the currencies on the other side. Some 80% or so of the world trade is still invoiced in US dollars. So it goes without saying that if you want to be resilient, you must still have a substantial amount of dollars in your foreign exchange reserves, even as you diversify to the other currencies. Any other question in the room? Okay. There is a question from Christine Teresa Ngumalo, who says, we do not have qualified female candidates. Ms. Ngumalo, our board is majority female. Actually, if anything, maybe we might need to do some affirmative action for men to increase their proportion on the board. We are very proud of our board. This current board that we have, it's made up of 15 and 9 are female. So you couldn't ask for any better representation than that. There is an audio question from Mr. Michael Day.
Hear me?
Go
Do you
ahead.
hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay. You know that I'm a shareholder. And I have 2 questions to the governor. The one is based on the gold, on the 108 tons or nearly shy of 4 million ounces. When did you see them your own, or when was the last audit? Because as Tito revealed to me years ago, he tried to look at it in the vaults of the Vlooten Airport, where the 108 tons were actually located for a while, and he never saw them. Therefore, I would be interested to see what your statement is about the physical audit of the 108 tons of the gold, which are on the balance sheet of the Reserve Bank. And the second question is about the valuation. Lesetja, you know that I'm always the one pushing it. Based on audited figures, the SARB has 526 billion in real reserves. Even with a conservative 30% central bank haircut, which you have in your annual report due to the BIS shares, that leaves over Rand 147 billion in value, yet shareholders are still told that the shares are only worth 10 Rand, 12 Rand. Each share is conservatively valued 73,752 Rand. The South African Reserve Bank Act is clear. In liquidation, shareholders receive 40% of net assets. Let the record reflect that the shareholders are grossly undervalued. And what's your statement to this? That actually the facts behind this is that 40% are for the shareholders. The only provision defining shareholder payout is in the liquidation clause in the South African Reserve Bank Act of '89. In the event of liquidation, 40% of assets shall be distributed to shareholders and 60% to the government. There is no other law or policy reducing this percentage. This means that all valuation discussions for shareholders must start with a liquidation entitlement. I would like to actually have a comment on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Whilst we are counting the gold, let me take the next question. So from Ms. Numalo, says that although the SARB is constitutionally independent, it cannot remain neutral in the face of structural inequality in land and home ownership. And recommendations for SARB is a democratic and transformative era, incorporate equity into its money and credit policy frameworks, and support financial institutions that fund expropriated landowners and township developers, create regulatory guidelines to protect distressed home sellers and defaulters, use financial policy to support land reform and national developmental role. Okay. In 1913, South Africa created the Land and Agricultural Bank, commonly referred to as the Land Bank. It's a development finance institution owned by government, and its responsibility is to fund agriculture. They issue bonds and bills. And for a long time, they were very privileged to have their bonds being accepted as collateral in the money market operations. And so this was an indirect subsidy by the South African Reserve Bank because all the other institutions were happy to hold their paper. Sometime in 2020, 2021, they decided that they are going to default on their paper. What that meant was that they might still be a liquid asset, but they were no longer high quality because we only hold high quality liquid assets. So their paper no longer qualified as high quality liquid assets. Government had since recapitalized the land bank. That is where that must go through. In terms of protecting sellers, we have got a responsibility here. We have got a prudential regulation responsibility, and there are issues of market conduct. Our job is to protect the depositors, policyholders on whom the flow of credit in the system depends on. Take away the depositors, you don't have a bank. You do not have a bank. When we say there is a bank run, it means the deposits are flowing out of a bank. And that is why the regulatory objective is to protect the depositor, protect the depositors. Incorporating equity into monetary and policy, we do not have a credit policy framework. The regulation of credit is being done elsewhere by the National Credit Regulator, not us. Monetary policy frameworks are there to ensure that we execute to deliver on our mandate. And so it is complex enough to run monetary policy. It's complex enough. Now, start to bring in equity in there, throw in climate in there into the monetary policy framework, throw in inequality. Why stop there? Throw in education, throw in health. We also need a very healthy population. Throw in social policy. And then you have got the Tower of Babel. We no longer know who is doing what in the system. We do not know where we are going. The Constitution had been very clear. We create the South African Reserve Bank and we task the South African Reserve Bank to protect the value of the currency, because the protection of the value of the currency is in the interests of balanced and sustainable growth. And so we assign different responsibilities in the Constitution to different institutions. The courts are tasked with the administration of justice. The police are tasked with law and order, safety and security. The army is tasked with protecting our borders. We can ask the army to come to the party and help us target inflation. Of course they know how to target, but that is not the target that they can deliver on. So don't ask us to target things that we do not have capability of dealing with and that we do not have the instruments to deal with. Yes, so that deals with that. Mr. Dare, we audit our financial statements every year. And every so often, our internal audit team will go to where our gold is to verify our gold. Quite frankly, in this world, you should accept an auditor's certificate. We could just accept a certificate from the auditors at the Bank of England who would say, we have verified that the following bars belong to the South African Reserve Bank and they are kept in the vaults of the Bank of England. That is enough. I don't know what Governor number 8 was doing going to check the gold there, but he liked lifting a bar of gold, so may his soul rest in peace. Valuations, Mr. Dare, we have been at this before. You and I have been in the courts. That is where you can go and ventilate your things in the courts. There was a process of valuation that was conducted. You were unhappy with it. You wanted to challenge it. You didn't succeed. South Africa is a democratic country. We have got courts that are administering justice. Our courts have pronounced on this, and it is, I'm not going to help you derive more value out of South Africans more than what you are actually entitled to. And what you are entitled to in terms of the valuation of your shares is what is quoted on over-the-counter things. If you have offered to sell your shares at whatever price you said, you have put those orders before and says, this is the price I want. There were no buyers. That tells us that your price is off the limits. There's nothing further that one can help you with. Selepe Mpho, has the Finance Ministry indicated what may be the delay of the appointing of government-appointed directors Is there a timeline they have indicated? Well, there are no timelines in terms of the law. All that we were told was that they are working on it, and we are awaiting. It's not unprecedented. We have had this similar situation 2 or 3 AGMs ago. Yes, hopefully they will eventually make a decision on this. Thabo Mashirwani, there's a call for the SAP to consider economic growth and employment in exercising its duties. I think I've answered this question. Our mandate is price stability, because price stability is in the interest of balanced and sustainable growth in the Republic. Jan Munangwa, last year there was 100 billion from GFECRA. Why was this required, or how has it been used? Will same funding be required in near term? That is over 3 to 5 years. If so, how much? Okay, Mr. Munangwa. The movement of the money was basically 250 billion rand. In terms of the SAP Act, the unrealized profits on GFECRA can be transferred to the Treasury, to the National Revenue Fund, subject to an agreement between the bank and the Minister of Finance. These are unrealized profits. The only way you can realize them is to sell the underlying assets, meaning we must sell our reserves. It was something we were not prepared to do. So we created a liability on the books of the SAP. And we'll get back to that. So when we transferred the 250 billion rand to the Treasury, Treasuries do one thing that Treasuries do. They allocate money for the government departments to spend. That money enters the monetary system and creates excess liquidity in the system. The South African Reserve Bank must sterilize that money. And the way in which we do it is, in the past, we used to issue sub-debentures to mop up that extra liquidity. But now with a new monetary policy implementation framework, what we do is that we would take the money on deposit, and the banks would bring the money back into deposit with the Reserve Bank. When that money comes back into deposit with the Reserve Bank must now pay interest on that money. So on 100 billion rands, at the current repo rate of 7%, that basically means that the SAP has to find 7 billion rands every year in order to mop the excess liquidity. At the time, the capital of the bank was just about 20 billion rand. It doesn't take long to realize that in just under 3 years, the capital of the Reserve Bank would be wiped off. And so, once the capital of the Reserve Bank is wiped off, what do you have? We must call and queue like the other state-owned enterprises at the Treasury and say, capital, please. Once you enter that territory, and trust me, I used to be the DG of the Treasury. When you come to the Treasury and you are asking for capital, the first thing I think is, what conditions do I put on this capital before I allocate the capital? And I don't know what conditions they could come. They could come to something like allow inflation to do this, or cut rates, do this, and all of that stuff is a conversation I don't want to have. So, Treasury, we will give you the 250 billion. But we want to be clear. We want 100 billion back so that that 100 billion will be used to absorb this costs of liquidity. But with the remaining 150 billion, we'll give you 100 now, and the other 50 will come in tranches 25, 25. But we don't want to have this conversation all the time, every year. So we want a robust framework. So we put together a framework with rules that govern how the transfers will take place in the future and how they would deal with. Key rule had to do with protecting the policy solvency of the Reserve Bank, that the Reserve Bank is able to execute its mandate without having to go somewhere cap in hand asking for capital. And so that framework is on our website and on the Treasury's website, and with frequently asked questions, that is how it goes. But the more fundamental question is, could we expect more transfers in the future? Yeah, there might be, but the framework also provides that the transfers can go the other way. It's not unprecedented. In 2003, the GFACRA was in a massive loss, and the Treasury had to pay. So people must not think that there is a pot of gold in the Reserve Bank that you can just come and tap as and when you need. It can go the other way around, and you might have to pay. Going forward, the transfers will not be that big. The reason why that other transfer was that big was because it had accumulated over a 20-year period. That is why it was that big. Okay. Ms. Petla, regarding the need to review the inflation target, is there an aligned process to close with the Treasury Finance Minister, as it seems the last 7 MPC and the Minister are singing from separate hymn sheets? Yes, we are in different buildings. The hymn sheets will be different. But there is a joint process, and we are engaged in those conversations. And all that the Reserve Bank had to say was that the target range is 3 to 6. Right? So the target range of 3 to 6, it's wide, but the target range is 3 to 6. We used to aim in the middle, and we said we need a policy cushion. We will aim at the bottom. Why now? Why didn't you do this thing 20 years ago and aim for the lower end? I mean, inflation targeting had been there for 25 years. And the only reason it was done now was because inflation is already there at 3. And economists complicate these things. They call it opportunistic disinflation. But the bottom line is that it is there. That is what we did. The target range is still 3 to 6. All that we did is that we will aim closer to the lower end of the inflation targeting range. Nothing more, nothing less. The conversations continue. We have got the structures between the Treasury and the Reserve Bank, and these debates will take place, and I have got no doubt we will find each other. Jan Munangwa, okay, I don't want to have a conversation with 2 shareholders. I'm going to take the last from the 2 of you. Jan Mgawa says, since at least 20, the spread between the official rates and inflation has widened, visually suggesting that the monetary policy has already using a 3% target. Is this the case based on? No, Jan, it is not the case. It's no point having an inflation target that you keep a secret and you tell nobody of, because the benefit of an inflation target is to anchor inflation expectations. So if you are secretly targeting something else, you are not achieving anything. You will not achieve anything because you are secretly targeting something, but you are on the other hand saying, the target range is 3 to 6, but I am targeting something else, but I can't tell you exactly why I am targeting that. And it's a very important question, Jan, because there was a view, and the SAP obliged, that the SAP was not targeting 3 to 6. The SAP was targeting an inflation rate of 5.99. And so every time the inflation rate dropped below 6, there would be excitement, the SAP is going to cut. And the SAP cut. So they reinforced that. As a result of that, there started to be academics who started studying what is the implicit target of the SAP. And they started to try and calculate. We think they are targeting 5.8. It doesn't make the framework transparent. It is important to be clear. This is what we are targeting. If you decide to hide it, there isn't a shortage of clever economists who will try to calculate what your hidden target is. Ms. Nxumalo, this is the last question I'm taking from you. Why do banks charge so much interest that bond repayments are 3 times the property value? Talk to your bank. Compound interest over long periods, most loans are over 20. This long repayment period causes interest rates to accumulate over time. You can pay back 2 to 3 times. I agree with you. If you stretch your loan to 20, 30 years, you will end up paying twice, 3 times. Only solution, pay it over a shorter period of time, and then you will not pay 2 times or 3 times the price. This is an excellent lesson in finance that you had given us, and I think that it's important South Africans understand it. Okay. I close the questions online. Are there any other questions in the room? Well. With that, I understand that I have done very well answering the questions, and Ms. Mary Vilakazi would like to come and mark my script.
Bit of a walk, but I didn't want to trip on anything here. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity of making the vote of thanks this morning. Governor Kganyago, Deputy Governors, the Board of Directors, and fellow shareholders. It's my privilege to extend our sincere appreciation to the South African Reserve Bank on behalf of First Rand, the financial services sector, and all shareholders. We gather today to honor an institution that continues to stand as a beacon of trust, credibility, and independence. The SAP's steadfast commitment to its constitutional mandate to preserve the value of the currency and to secure a stable financial system remains foundational to South Africa's economic resilience. The SAP celebrated its 100th birthday during the COVID-19 pandemic, where it was instrumental in protecting the functioning of both the financial system and the real economy through the biggest economic shock of our lifetimes. The SAP's credibility in fulfilling its mandate has long been respected globally, particularly the ability to assess and respond to our domestic context. More recently, this has created capacity to respond to the meaningful divergence in the inflation outlooks for South Africa versus other regions, even that meant not moving in lockstep with developed markets' central banks on monetary policy. We now find ourselves in a significant geopolitical and macroeconomic volatile period from various fronts on international trade, capital flows, and technological disruption, to mention a few. Economies, whether developed or emerging, will increasingly have to refocus on their competitive advantages and resilience as the world order transitions. This year, the SAP has once again demonstrated its leadership in navigating a complex an evolving environment and supporting South Africa's future economic resilience. The intention to lower inflation at the bottom end of the sub-stated range of 3 to 6% target range should support greater price stability as inflation falls. And as inflation expectations gradually adjust to a lower anchor of inflation of 3%, this will usher in an era of a lower interest rate environment in South Africa, much needed. And this will help South Africa's competitive global footing for attracting capital amidst the volatility, lowering government funding costs and enabling the investment-led growth required for a sustainable improvement in living standards. We commend the SAP's critical role in monitoring financial stability risks and ensuring that our financial system remains robust, well-capitalized, and globally respected. The SAP's contributions to the development of the systemic risk framework and its leadership in the implementation of Basel III reforms continue to set a high standard. Importantly, we recognize the SAP's efforts in supporting South Africa's progress exiting the FATF grey list. With only 2 action items remaining and a final review in October, the SAP's risk-based supervision and collaboration with law enforcement agencies has been instrumental in strengthening confidence in our financial integrity. This process not only strengthens our global standing, but also reduces transaction costs, improves access to capital, and enhances investor sentiment on South Africa. The SAP's work in deepening local capital markets, promoting domestic savings, and indeed lowering the inflation target are essential to this effort. A stronger savings base enables greater investment in infrastructure, energy, and other key national priorities, building resilience and driving inclusive growth. And this should complement and support the country's structural economic reform efforts executed through Operation Vulindlela. In this context, we celebrate the SAP's leadership in modernizing South Africa's payments landscape. The rollout of PayShap, built on the Rapid Payments Program rails, is already transforming real-time payments in South Africa. With 4.5 million PayShap registered ID Shap proxies and transaction volumes growing by over 1,000% over the past year. PayShap is driving financial inclusion and reducing transaction costs and enabling a faster, safer, and more accessible payment system for individuals and businesses alike. As South Africa hosts the G20 this year, the SAP's voice on the global stage is more important than ever. The SAP's contributions to international financial stability and financial architecture on climate risk management and sustainable finance, they reinforce our country's reputation as a responsible and forward-looking member of the global financial community. Governor, Deputy Governors, and the entire SAP team, your professionalism, integrity, and dedication continue to inspire confidence. You are not only guardians of our financial system, but you play a critical role in stewardship of our economic future. On behalf of all shareholders, thank you for your continued excellence, and we look forward to supporting your work in the year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for those kind words. There being no other matters, to the best of my knowledge, all the business included in the agenda for today's meeting has been transacted. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to President Ramaphosa and Deputy President Mashatile, as well as the government and the Parliament of the Republic of South Africa for their continued support. The working relationship between the National Treasury and the SAP has remained strong, and I would like to thank the Minister of Finance, Mr. Enoch Godongwana, the Deputy Ministers of Finance, Dr. David Masonto and Mr. Asho Sarupen, the Director General, Dr. Duncan Peterse, as well as the staff of the National Treasury for their support. Sincere thanks are also due to the members of the board for their contribution and for upholding sound corporate governance within the SAP. I would also like to express my deep appreciation to Deputy Governors Kasim, Chasivana, and Modise, as well as the entire management and staff of the SAP for their continued dedication and support. Your efforts are the foundation of SAP's success. And I'm confident that the coming year will be more fruitful. To all the shareholders and guests, thank you for your attendance and participation in this AGM. We trust that we can continue to count on your support in the future. I now declare this, the 105th Annual Ordinary General Meeting of the shareholders of the South African Reserve Bank closed. Thank you very much for your attendance. Refreshments will be served in the foyer outside the auditorium.